York's very own muscle building coaches, Anthony Bevilacqua and Pete Kacharian, proudly present to you New York Muscle Radio.
What's up, guys? New York Muscle Radio, episode number 149, Restricting Carbs to Gain Muscle. Yes, you heard that title correctly. Restricting carbs in the off-season will lead to more muscle growth. This is not some voodoo fake coaching gimmick, and on today's episode, we will discuss why you can limit your carb intake for massive gains. If you're a new listener, welcome to the best muscle building fitness network on the planet. It's your host, Anthony Bevilacqua, alongside my co-host, Big Pete Kacharian. What's up, big guy?
What's going on, man? How you? I have to ask this on the podcast. How you feeling today? You sore at all, or are you recovered?
Yeah, I'm fine today.
You good today? I've actually been. I haven't been too sore this weekend. Although yesterday and Friday, I told you my central nervous system felt like it got hit by a truck.
Yeah, but no one knows why. You got to say why, man. You forgot to mention that.
Yeah, well, so we actually, some people might know, if you guys do follow us on Instagram, our New York Muscle Radio Instagram, we've been I guess adding to our story. We've been recording some of our workouts in clips, and we've been putting them on our story on Instagram. And if you guys are following that, on Friday we decided to combine Fridays and Saturdays workout. So that meant that we had to do squats, bench press, then we had to do an entire leg workout, then we had to do an entire shoulder and tricep workout. So I was telling Anthony when we were doing this, this was basically like CrossFit, although like maybe what CrossFit actually should be.
Yeah, it's like we've invented a new CrossFit. What would we call it? Weight training?
Yeah, exactly. That's what it is. It's actual weight training. Yeah.
Weight fit.
But yeah, I mean, it's not, when I say CrossFit, it's not like we were doing high reps and stuff like that. We were squatting heavy. We were doing sets of 3, I think. Bench, we were doing sets of 3. But it was heavy weight, and we ended up supersetting crazy stuff at the end: overhead press, leg press, dumbbell presses with stiff leg deadlifts. So I don't know about you, but after that workout, I felt like a truck hit me. I wasn't sore, but my body was just telling me it's time for a rest day.
Yeah, no, I was so sore yesterday. Yesterday, I went to the Museum of Natural History. Have you ever been there?
Long time ago, yeah.
So the Museum of Natural History is awesome. For those of you that never came to New York, or you guys should actually go to it if you're ever in New York, it's like 4 or 5 floors. This museum is tremendous. And we did like a show, like a planetarium show. You know on Friends, when Ross takes Rachel to the planetarium?
Yeah.
And they have like the stars. That's exactly what it was. So it's like a big ass dome, and you sit down in the thing and you watch like the stars and whatever the hell it's like the show on the universe. I knocked out, dude. The show was a half hour.
Yeah.
Knocked out. I probably was snoring during the whole thing. That's how tired I was. That's how tired my body was. I was so beat up yesterday. I was like really sore. I was like, wow, I haven't been sore like that in a while.
Yeah, I told you, man. Friday, Anthony was texting me on Friday after we finished working out, maybe an hour or two later. He wanted me to send him a video. And, I told him I was going to edit it and send it to him. And he texted me, and I didn't answer him for like 2 hours. And I woke up, and I was like, oh, man, I passed out. I was so tired. When I went home, I said, I'm going to sleep, man.
Yeah, it was brutal. But actually, I did catch the first 5 minutes of that like planetarium show.
Mm-hmm.
And, dude, it was cool. It was like showing like how our universe is like, we're just a blip. Like, basically, we're just a blip on the whole thing. Like, and to think that there's no other planet in the whole entire universe, like outside our solar system and outside the other galaxies, is really crazy if you think about it. So we're like a blip, literally like a blip, like a little dot in the entire universe. So it's either we're really blessed and we are the only living thing ever, or we're crazy for thinking, oh, there's someone else on another planet somewhere that has their own fitness podcast also named Anthony.
Yeah, they're doing it's not New York Muscle Radio, it's like outer space radio. Muscle radio. But
different planet radio.
Yeah, it's funny though how everything's put in perspective. It's like, even in something simple, like people think like everything is such a big deal and everything's centered around you. Even us as like a culture, a species,
we're nothing.
Even as a planet, we're nothing. You know what I mean?
Yeah, so true. And you have to be really naive to think that there's nothing else living on any other planet.
Yeah, I don't know about that. I'm not really too into that stuff, so I'm not as educated on it. But just to think about it in that perspective, it's like, yeah, we're so small compared to everything. There's no way.
But it was really cool. Like, if you ever go to the Museum of Natural History, you have to watch that planetarium thing. I'm telling you, because it puts everything in perspective.
Yeah.
Basically, like, so from what we could see on Earth, for as far as like the other galaxies go, it's only like a small. You know what a Venn diagram is when you have two circles together. So we can only see to the end of our circle.
Right.
But then if there's a galaxy that's at the end of our circle, they could see beyond where we are, like the end of their circle.
Yeah.
So it's kind of really like, when you really think about it, you're like, damn, we're so insignificant, you know.
It's funny, but it's true.
It's almost like scary a little bit,
everyone thinks they're more important than they really are, I guess.
Yeah.
You know, the universe, you know, you're very tiny in the universe.
Maybe we can go top 10 in the universe on podcast.
Yeah,
we
you
can, like,
see?
signal this out to somewhere, you know, another planet in another galaxy.
Yeah, the universe doesn't care about us being, you know, top 20, top 10 on iTunes. There's a whole universe beyond that.
I know. So true. Oh, man, I had such a busy morning today, though, man. I was running around. I worked this morning. It's Sunday, so I worked all morning. Then we ran to the store, so we went shopping. Like, you know BJ's, obviously.
Yeah.
So I went to BJ's, but I don't know if our listeners, is there, I guess, like Sam's Club. What's like a national, like, BJ's warehouse? Is there BJ's all over the United States? Yeah, there is.
I think there is, yeah.
Like BJ's, Costco, Sam's Club, like that
Yeah.
kind of a place. I don't know what the heck UK has. I'm not sure about that.
No idea.
But anyway, so buy everything in bulk, you know, typical usual shopping. And my wife came in. You know how they have like the people that serve like the food? Like
Yeah, they
like,
give out the
testing?
samples and stuff, yeah.
Yeah, so they had this guy was making like grilled cheese with like some garlic butter. Holy shit, dude. This garlic butter was the best I've ever tasted. Yo, so we bought this it was only like $6 for a big thing of butter. Dude, it was so good. And the macros were pretty good. It was like 4.5 grams of fat, but it was so garlicky. Oh my God, dude, it was unbelievable. The grilled cheese, my wife just made me one. It was so good.
Oh man, I'm jealous. I love garlic. Anything with garlic and bread, man.
And I also bought, and I text you a picture of it, but you didn't respond as usual. Is it Entenmann's? No, Thomas's. Thomas's makes pizza flavored bagels.
How is that?
I don't know. I didn't eat one yet, so I'm kind of excited. I want to see if I can put the garlic butter on that.
I was gonna say, I don't know. Is that something you would put like cream cheese on? It wouldn't be something. I would think it's just
the garlic butter. That's kind of why I bought the garlic butter.
Yeah, that would probably be good.
Yeah. So I figured tomorrow, maybe we'll video that tomorrow for our workout, and we'll have one. I'll let you try some.
Sounds good.
But yeah, I'm excited. It was so good. I can't wait for you to try it. We'll do a taste test tomorrow. If you guys haven't subscribed to our video feed yet, go ahead and do so. NewYorkMuscleRadio.com/video. So we always put out some videos, and we've been doing a lot more lately. So you'll see one of Big Pete trying this, and we'll let you know how the pizza bagels are. Well, pizza flavored bagels.
I love bagels, man. If anybody watches those videos, they know I love bagels. So, but yeah. I don't know. We're gonna have to take it easy with the cream cheese before the if we're doing a pre-workout, because I was telling you that too.
We were eating an entire thing of cream cheese.
Yeah, we were getting a little crazy with the cream cheese. Me and Anthony were doing like 2 bagels, 2 scoops of protein powder, and then like half a container of cream cheese each. And then Anthony wants to work out like 5 minutes later. He's like, all right, come on, let's go. And I'm like, come on, man, let the food digest a little bit.
I have like a cast iron stomach though. Like I can do that stuff. It doesn't bother me. It bothers.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I'm actually mortal. You know, that's the difference. You can put anything in this guy's stomach and he'll digest it. It doesn't matter what it is.
Yeah, I don't know. It's weird. Sometimes though, it depends on what I eat, and then my stomach bothers me. But I can have stuff that's like expired, and it really usually doesn't bother me. It depends what it is.
Well, you see, you know what? It's funny, but it's a good point too, and I think our listeners could actually take a little bit away from this too. A lot of people don't understand that there's a difference between your digestive system or your digestive rate and your metabolic rate. There's plenty of people, like Anthony has a very high metabolic rate, but his digestive system and his digestive rate is also pretty good. I'd say I'm almost on par with him as far as metabolic rate. He might be a little bit faster than mine, but my digestion is nowhere near his. So if it takes, let's say, it would honestly take me about 4,500 calories a day to probably break 200 pounds. Anthony is probably around the same.
No, way more, man.
Way more?
I wish. Yeah, way more.
All right, so okay, so that's a good example. But he could take in. If you had to take in 5, what's that most you've bulked on before? I know you've had some crazy bulking cycles
like
you've been on.
5,500?
Yeah. And
like something stupid like that.
And you were able to do that for a long period of time?
Yeah, a decent amount of time.
Yeah, and your stomach tolerated it pretty well?
Yeah, but I couldn't take eating it like that anymore.
You got sick of it, but your stomach could handle it, right? See, my
Yeah.
stomach would pretty much like tap out at like 4,000 calories. That's like where my digestion just maxes
dude,
out.
not for nothing, not to be graphic on this,
Yeah.
but I probably went to the toilet number 2 probably like at least four to five times a day when I was having that many calories. I think you have no choice though.
Right.
All that food, it's got to go somewhere.
Well, yeah, no, of course. That's going to happen. The more you eat that, the more that's going to happen. But what I'm saying, too, is like if I'm consistently eating 4,000 calories a day, my stomach's not going to even have room in it to put more food in. It's going to be like out to here, for like 6 hours at a time, And I've said this before. Yeah. And I've said this before, too. A lot of times what happens with me, and some clients can definitely relate to this, if they go out and they have a really, really large meal, like let's say one day, let's say they're eating 3,500 calories a day, and they go out and lunch or whatever it is a really large meal. It's like 1,500, 2,000 calories, which is really excessive, but let's say it's even 1,500.
When you're going out to eat, man, that's not that hard to get in.
2,000 calories is a little bit of a challenge, but like 1,500 is probably about standard.
Not really, dude. For my sister, when we went out and we went to Cheesecake Factory, didn't we have like 2,000 calories that meal?
Yeah, probably. But that's a good example because this is what I was getting at. That meal, I was so full after it that I couldn't even get more food down for the rest of the day. I had like a protein shake before I went to bed. And, I ended up eating like about the same amount I'd eat in a day. But I couldn't eat any more. You know what I mean? So my stomach actually couldn't tolerate it. So some people that have trouble getting past a certain weight, you have to actually put kind of a limit on the calories just because the digestive system doesn't take anymore.
Yeah, I mean, that makes sense. That's why I think, I actually just I bought last week and I tried that kefir. I never had it before. Have you ever had it?
I haven't. I've heard good things about it, but I have no personal experience to relate on that.
Basically, it's like probiotic yogurt, but it's in a drink. It actually is not that bad. It's a little bitter tasting, a tangy tasting, not bitter, tangy. But I noticed that it did help me. Like I did help my digestion a little bit. Not that I have an issue with that, but I like to take a good digest. I think, especially when bulking,
yes,
this fits into our thing. A good digestive enzyme supplement is going to be the best. I think that's a really, really good product because it'll help you digest all the extra protein, all the extra carbs, all the extra fat. And then having like a probiotic occasionally on top of that will help keep you a little more regular. Again, like I said, when I was having so many calories, it has to go somewhere. So you're going to be going to the bathroom more often. But
yeah, and when you're pushing the calories like he was, or even if you're not, like for me, 4,500 is really pushing it. When my calories are that high, if it doesn't go anywhere, if it just sits in my stomach, it's not helping. You know what I mean? So you're just eating food that's not going towards muscle building.
Actually, we're going to bring this up. We'll bring this up later because I want to talk about this because our topic today is restricting carbs to gain muscle, which sounds so outside of the box from what you normally hear. But we'll talk about my off season in there because I think that's a perfect example to it. All right, let's change gears a little bit. So, man, are you excited for tonight, man? The Walking Dead.
I am, man. Well, you know what? I'm excited, but I can't say I'm overly excited because I was not a fan of the season so far, man.
Why?
Episode 1 was great because we were all waiting to see what happened with Negan and who he killed. And, episode 1 came back and I love
Negan, man. He's fucking great.
It delivered. But the rest of the season was a little bit of a letdown. It was probably one of the weakest seasons so far, I'd have to say.
I love when he tells Rick, I just slid my dick down your throat and you thanked me. He's great, man. He really is.
Negan is good, but as far as, I don't know, the rest of the characters, it's just watching them all kind of fall apart and nothing really going on this season. But the way The Walking Dead likes to do it is they'll keep it, they'll go on a low end for a while and then something big will happen. So I think now after it returns this week, I think we're going to see some big changes. And if we don't, then I'm going to be really disappointed. Yeah,
nothing beats the first season, though. That first season was crazy. How it was just like action after action after action after action, And then they have to make it like a story. Like then they make drama and they create all this drama between the characters.
Yeah. Well, it used to be that they were actually afraid of the Walking Dead with the zombies. They were actually the threat. Now it's just like that's just what's going on.
I guess it makes sense though.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, of course. Things change.
You're so right though, because in the beginning, like the second season, they were always afraid of the herds, like the herd.
Yeah, that was
now
the problem.
Now they like keep down 30 walkers by themselves.
Yeah, that was the problem. You might get eaten by zombies. Now it's just like, all right, listen, just make sure if you go out there, no zombies eat you. Yeah. It's like in Florida when you're afraid of the alligators. Like if you go out, just watch out for alligators, guys.
Exactly. All right, let's move on to the New York Muscle Radio quote of the day. Now, today's quote, my co-host actually found it, and I think it's a really, really funny one. And this quote is titled, I have no idea who the woman is, so I don't know who this is, but it says, why motivation is garbage. So listen closely.
I think it's garbage because at some point we all bought into this lie that you got to feel ready in order to change.
Yeah.
We bought into this complete falsehood that at some point you're going to have the courage. At some point you're going to have the confidence, and it's total bull. Frankly, are we allowed to swear on this show? Okay, it's complete garbage. And so there are so many people in the world, and you know, you may be watching this right now, and you have these incredible ideas, and what you think is missing is motivation, and that's not true, because the way that our minds are wired, and the fact about human beings is that we are not designed to do things that are uncomfortable or scary or difficult. Our brains are designed to protect us from those things because our brains are trying to keep us alive. And in order to change, in order to build a business, in order to be the best parent, the best spouse, to do all those things that you know you want to do with your life, with your work, with your dreams, you're going to have to do things that are difficult, uncertain, or scary.
Yeah, that's crazy, man. She's so right.
Yeah, and you know what it is? It's so perfect that someone's, you know, this. I think this was somewhat of a viral video. It was going around, and I think it's perfect that this is kind of circulating now on social media because, and we've talked about this before, I think in maybe even the last episode, because of all the shit that's going out there now with the motivation and the success and then all this other stuff. Everyone is going around now claiming to be a motivational speaker. Everyone's on the motivation bandwagon, and it's just like, listen, stop posting that shit. And the reason I say stop posting that shit is you don't have to tell people you're motivated and that you're getting all this shit done. The fact is, anybody who gets stuff done that the result is going to be something worth doing is they have to do stuff that they don't want to do. They have to do stuff that sucks. They have to do stuff that's not fun, that they're not motivated to do. But the people that have this stuff just say, okay, I don't want to do it, but I'm going to do it anyway. You know, it's just like anything else. You know, everyone, especially you could relate this to fitness too. Everyone's got to say like, oh, I'm motivated. You know, I'm going to kill this workout. I'm going to do this. I got goals, all this stuff. It's like, listen, it's never going to be easy. You don't have to be motivated to do it or not motivated to do it. You just have to get it done. That's the biggest thing is, it's all about just executing at the end of the day. It's not about being motivated and doing all this great stuff. It's, okay, what does it take to get the job done, and then do it. Even if it sucks, do it. We all do stuff every day. People that get up every single morning at, you know, whatever time they get up, 5, 6 o'clock to go to their 9 to 5 job. It's not about motivation. It's the fact that, okay, I have to do this to get it done, and I just choose to do it, and I do it, you know?
End rant.
Yeah, so, you know, you guys, some people need to hear that because a lot of people think that, you know, that this motivation is like the key to everything in life, and it's about just execution, more or less.
Yeah, you're so right, man. I mean, you know, I think it's cool that, you know, the other funny part about it is that she spun it, why motivation is garbage. That's probably why it went viral, because people click that and like, what the hell? What does that mean? But it's so true. You know, like, think about it. Like, I don't have to get motivated to do a podcast. You know, like we say, okay, we need a podcast. Like today, it's like, all right, we need a podcast for Monday. All right. And of course, I'm like, like, you know, I don't know. I'm busy. I'm running around. I'm like, all right, I just make the time for it. You know, I got to get it done. But this is like my philosophy on life, though. Yeah. That's me, 100%.
Just get it done.
Just get it done.
Yeah.
I don't think about it. I just get it fucking done.
Yeah, it's true. You're better off sometimes, you know, because a lot of times people think that they need to be motivated to get shit done. There's plenty of times when I do stuff. I mean, I'd say 99% of the time I do stuff, and when I do it, I'm not motivated. You know, I'm motivated.
I force you to do them.
I'm motivated way less than I am motivated to do stuff, guys. I got to be honest with you. There's little times when I am more motivated than not motivated. But I get stuff done regardless if I'm motivated or not. That's what you need to realize.
Yeah, and again, when people say, "Oh, like I need motivation," like I have to watch this video before I go to the gym because I need motivation to train. It's like, really? You need a video to make motivation for you? It's either you want to do it or you don't want to do it. And if you don't want to do it, you just force yourself to do it. It's that simple.
Yeah, I've been told so many times too, like even with something so simple, like people ask me, "Oh, what pre-workout do you use?" And like I tell them, like I don't even use pre-workouts. And yeah, pre-workouts could help you if you need a little energy and stuff like that. But I always thought in the back of my mind, like, I still got to work out. I still got to get it done. Whether if I have to rely on this pre-workout to get it done or not, like then there's really a different thing I got to think about, whether it's if I'm actually just going to do my work and get it done, or if I'm going to look for a magic pill to get the work done. You know what I mean? So sometimes you have to say to yourself, listen, even if I don't feel like doing it, I just got to get the job done. I don't need to be motivated to get the job done. I just got to get the job done.
Yeah, I think a pre-workout can help though. Like I love using
Yeah.
caffeine. I think that's my favorite pre-workout ever. And I'm not just because I invented the product, but because I really do like the amount of energy it gives me, and I don't crash. And I believe that people crash on all those other pre-workouts because of all the other crap that's in there. You know, it's aside from caffeine. Sometimes these guys put those quote unquote nootropics in there, and sometimes it's fake. And it's just like, dang, you never know what the hell's in those
that's what I'm
things.
saying. I mean, yeah, there's no question about it that pre-workouts work, and I always like to say that caffeine is just the that's fine. That gets the job done for me, But everyone's always looking
Decaf
for
coffee gets the job
Oh
done.
yeah, honestly, decaf will get my mind going by itself, but then the caffeine actually gets the body following too. But everyone's always looking for like the next thing to get themselves motivated to work out. Oh, I got to go step up. I got to go to C4. Then I got to go to ESP, and I got to go 500 milligrams of caffeine and all this crazy shit. When it's like, listen, if you can't get it done without it, then stop looking for the secret to get it done. The secret is just getting it done.
Look at this, man. I have a good wife, man. Look, I just got food delivery to me. Look at that. See
Man,
it?
I'm jealous. If this was like 2027, maybe you could like pass that through the computer and I could get one too. But
And you could have a bite.
yeah, I have to
so
wait.
my wife made this rice and beef thing with like peas and carrots. Oh man, it smells so good. Too bad our listeners can't smell this right now. But yeah, I'm gonna be eating this during the podcast, man. I'm sorry. I'm gonna be chewing today.
Nice,
There it
man.
is.
Here we are talking about motivation and getting shit done, and this guy's getting spoon-fed some nice meals during the podcast.
Yeah. I have a girl next to me, another girl next to me over here. She's gonna start feeding me grapes and fanning me. This is what happens when you're the host,
And
man.
we're over here telling people just get shit done, guys.
Yeah, I am getting shit done. I'm doing the podcast and I'm eating lunch.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah, it is true.
Come on, man. You gotta be productive with your time.
I agree.
All right. Let's move on to the trending topic. Today's trending topic, I thought it was funny. One of my friends actually sent this to me because I'll back up. I'll tell you why he sent it to me after. But basically, the title of this article is called "This is the most functional exercise you can do. So why aren't you doing it?" And the exercise in this article is actually deadlifts. So my friend sent this to me because he hates deadlifts. But basically, what this article is saying is that deadlifts are the best exercise that you should be doing because it has the most carryover into everything else that you do in your life. So basically, a deadlift is a hip hinge motion, which basically means you're using your posterior chain and your hips to pick things up off the ground. And if you do think about it, we do that all day long. Even if you want to believe it, you do.
Yeah, and it's probably the one exercise that most people don't want to do. I definitely think most people even prefer to squat over a deadlift. But yeah, deadlift probably has the most carryover to everything, like you said, because nobody's just standing straight up all day long. We're always bending at the hips. So if you're not doing an exercise to work on those muscle groups, you're going to be doing a movement throughout the entire day with muscles that you aren't actively working on. And a lot of times the number one issue people have when they get older as far as pain and injuries and stuff like that is always lower back.
Yeah.
It's always related to the hips one way or the other. Even if it's not directly the lower back, your whole posterior chain works together, especially when you're doing a deadlift. Your hips, your glutes, your hamstrings, your lower back, those muscles you have to strengthen. Even if you weren't into fitness, even if you weren't into bodybuilding or anything like that, if you just wanted to do one exercise for longevity, I would say do the deadlift.
Yeah, definitely. Basically, especially when someone bends over to pick something up, I'm talking about just a normal person. Usually what they do is they bend their legs just a little bit and then they like completely round over and look like a big question mark when they pick stuff off the ground. And that might be okay if you're picking up a pencil off the ground, but if you're picking up a heavy item or your child or this or that, you have to use that hip hinge motion. So this is why basically learning how to deadlift correctly is so important for overall carry over to life. So I actually like this article. I thought it was a really, really cool one. Yeah. It's just something different and it explains why you should be doing deadlifts. And again, like we said, just because you could lift a pencil off the ground with bad form, but what about if it's something heavier?
It's so true. And I mean, most people that end up hurting their backs or getting any type of injury do it not doing something like heavy or excessive.
Yeah, that's what I was just going to say too.
It's always like you said, like picking up a pencil. I know people who have done that. Not a pencil, but like picking up like a grocery bag that might weigh 5 pounds, but just because of the position they went in to pick it up, because their muscles are weak, because they're not doing any type of corrective exercise or any type of strengthening exercise for those muscle groups, over time, those muscles get weak. I was in the Stop and Shop the other day going to get bagels, and a woman was coming out of the back with like some of the bakery items. She's bending over to put them down, and she's going, "Oh, my back!" And she's putting down like rolls and like bread. Like it wasn't heavy, but because she had to bend down to get it, she even said it out loud. Oh, my back. You know, and it's because her back doesn't even want to bend in that position because those muscles are so weak, you know?
Yeah, most people think they have, oh, my back hurts. They think it's actually, pain or this or that. It's actually just caused from weak muscles and not being conditioned in that area.
Yeah, you know, it's easy to confuse it with actually being like joint pain or it actually being something in your back. But yeah, like I said, a lot of times it might not even be your back muscles. Your lower back muscles are weaker because maybe your hips, your glutes, stuff like that, they're not active, they're atrophied, and then it's placing stress on the other supporting muscles. So it all works together, and doing a movement like a deadlift will work all those muscle groups. So that's the one thing I would definitely tell people. I mean, everybody listening to this is probably interested in going way past just having good posture and strong muscles. But if you're not doing deadlifts, throw them in.
Yeah, deadlifts are actually fun to do too, you know? There's just like a fun, I feel like it's especially, I don't want to say for a guy, but especially just, it's like one of those raw, like just power movements.
Yeah.
You know, you just kind of like, you get yourself amped up, you go in, you just lift it, rip it off the ground. It's just something about that that's so fun, you know?
Yeah,
even for a woman too.
There's nothing more humbling than the deadlift too, because there's so many exercises you could do where you think you're really strong and, you know, you get this ego behind it. Oh, I bench 3 plates, I bench whatever. You know, even if you squat a lot of weight, it doesn't always mean you deadlift a lot. So like people who do all these lifts, you know, they press the 100-pound dumbbells and they go pick up 315 on a deadlift and it just humbles them. You know what I mean?
It looked like a big question mark picking it up.
Yeah. So it's one of those movements, guys. If you add that into, everything else is going to get stronger as well. So there's no reason. I don't see any reason. Do you know any reason not to put a deadlift in your routine unless you have an injury?
Oh, if you don't have an injury, you're saying?
I'm saying, do you know any?
That's the only reason why.
Yeah, I can't think of any other reason not to do that movement.
And it doesn't have to be any type of deadlift will work. A conventional deadlift, a trap bar deadlift, a sumo deadlift, even a stiff leg deadlift will work.
Yeah, I was gonna say,
it doesn't necessarily have to be a conventional deadlift.
Yeah, even if your goal, if you're not trying to be as strong as possible, you just want, even if your goal is just to get bigger. Even doing a stiff leg deadlift is going to help you. You know, you don't necessarily have to just do a conventional all the time. So as long as you're doing a variation, like you said, you're going to work that whole posterior chain. There's more than one way to get the job done, but if you're not deadlifting, you're missing out. Yeah,
agreed. Man, this is really good what my wife made.
So what is it? You got rice and what?
Rice, beans, but they're like mixed and made together. And then there's peas and carrots in here. It's so good.
Nice. So yeah, rice and beans, man. If you guys are ever having trouble with money, get your rice and beans, guys.
It's not beans. Peas.
Oh, no beans in there?
No beans in here. Peas. I love green peas, though.
Yeah, peas are always good.
I remember when I first started dieting, I thought they were like a free vegetable.
Yeah, they're not.
Yeah, no, they're not. They actually have a lot of carbs in them.
Yeah, they're not at all.
But I remember when I first started, I was like, oh, I'll have peas. You know, peas is a vegetable. I don't have to count them. You know, like, sometimes I don't count broccoli because broccoli's so little. Spinach, spinach I don't count sometimes. But then, like,
peas different.
It's like, oh man,
peas are definitely different. Yeah. I always tell everybody to count everything anyway. But if you're like in the off season and you're in a big surplus or your bulk of your calories are very high, not counting a little bit of broccoli, like you're talking about maybe like 4 grams of carbs that you might not count, half of which is going to be fiber anyway. That's not something to worry about. But yeah, when you're doing stuff like peas and then there's other foods that people think they can get away with, I wouldn't recommend doing that.
I had a client once who came to me, and I explained to her about diet, and how there's no foods are better than others and blah, blah, blah. So she was saying, she goes, are you serious? I was like, yeah. So I was like a little puzzled when she said that. I'm like, what do you mean? She goes, I thought that carrots were so healthy. I was juicing an entire bag of carrots every day. Every day. You know how many calories that is?
I don't know. People go crazy with that shit, man. It's crazy.
Juicing?
Yeah. They end up
eating them carrots. Just make a salad.
But they go crazy. Like they'll put an entire apple in it, then they'll put the carrots in there, the spinach. They'll put a whole freaking thing of lettuce in there, or whatever they put in there. Celery. I'm sorry, not lettuce, but you get the point. Yeah, I'm sure some people do it. Like fuck it, just throw the lettuce in there too. But you get my point. It's like, and then they start putting like it's so excessive, some of it, and it's like, listen, just have your fruits and vegetables with your meals, and you're fine.
Yeah, or just make a big salad if you don't feel like, I don't know, whatever. I guess if you're bulking, a good juice is good. It's an easy way to get some calories in, but...
Yeah, I don't know. That's not for me.
Yeah. All right, so I want to just do a quick shout-out right now, and I'm only bringing this up because he recommended and I thought it was a good idea. So a shout-out our client, Osiris, who he actually managed to gain 5 pounds of lean muscle using our DUP-type program, which is similar to the New York Strong program. And he told me in the email back and forth, because I told him he looks so much bigger. He really did put on. He said 5 pounds based on the measurements that he has and what he keeps track of, but it's got to be at least almost 10. His body looks so different. He gained so much muscle. And he told me in our last email, you guys really need to promote this. So I was like, you know what? That's a good idea. I'll just shout him out now and give us a chance to talk about it, because he really put on a lot of muscle quickly.
Yeah, and the muscle that he gained is that muscle that I always talk about that you can't get unless you do the heavy basic movements. Like his back thickness really improved. He's more denser in his posterior chain, and there's nothing that'll pack muscle on like that than the deadlift. There's nothing. No matter how many rows you do, how many pull downs you do, how many machine exercises, there's nothing like grabbing a heavy barbell off the ground that's going to put muscle on your traps, your rhomboids, your spinal erectors, your lumbar. That's going to thicken you up. And there's a look that comes with that heavy, heavy lifting. And I always said it with me and you, before I started doing more powerlifting type training, we had very similar physiques, except for when we would turn around, you would just have those thick lumbar muscles, and your back was thick. We were pretty much the same, but that thickness is just where you beat me on. And that was because you were deadlifting like 500 pounds and I was deadlifting like 4. Just adding that 100 pounds of the deadlift on is going to thicken up all that muscle. So there's certain muscle groups that you just can't develop them without these movements. So, and if you're doing
them smartly too, it's not just one thing. There's one thing just to do them, but doing them smartly and doing them with progression I think that's the key right there. Because it wasn't until I really started powerlifting that I really started changing my physique.
Yeah, and you can't just put 100 pounds onto these lifts just by doing them. You got to be smart about your progression. You got to be smart about your periodization and the right volume and the right rep ranges, and that all has to be factored in together. It's just like calories, Calories work, but you got to make sure your macros are dialed in too. So just heavy lifting is going to work, but you're not going to progress if the rep ranges and the periodization is not accurate.
Well, I like to say that your diet is your stimulus. It'll tell your body exactly what to do. So if you're not eating enough, you're going to lose body fat. If you're eating enough, you're going to gain muscle. So it's just that simple. That's the way I look at the diet.
Yeah.
And then your training should be constant the whole time. If you're dieting, you should be using some type of program like this. If you're bulking, you should be using some type of program like this. So,
yeah. And, if you're dieting and you're doing a program like that too, it's going to keep your strength up while you're still burning fat. A lot of times people, when they talk about, I'm dieting and I lost muscle, I lost strength, your training is probably terrible. I got to be honest with you, because I've never worked with somebody, and I've never had this with myself, that if we didn't have their training dialed in while they were dieting, I've never worked with somebody that really reported, I have significant amount of muscle loss, significant amount of strength loss. I've never seen that.
I just look like complete shit, Pete. Help.
I've never seen that before.
Because we're not stupid.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. And then you get tons and tons of people, if you diet down, you're going to lose a pound of fat per pound of muscle. And I'm like, no way. Like, that's terrible progress.
So true. I was listening to someone else's podcast, and they mentioned something like that on there that you got to watch when you diet that you don't lose muscle. It's like, how do you lose muscle on a diet?
Yeah, if you're not being stupid about it, guys, you're not going to lose muscle. Yeah. If you go from eating 400 grams of carbs a day to 0 because you hear a keto diet is good, you're going to lose muscle. Yeah. But if
if you change your training around too, you got to remember too what keeps the muscle on, because obviously that's the goal during dieting, is to keep and even build a little bit of muscle. What's going to keep that on was the program that put it on in the first place. So let's just say you were using a DUP type program in the off season, and you were gaining muscle and making good progress. Then it's like, all right, it's time to cut, and then you just switch and do one body part a day routine. Of course you're going to lose muscle because you're not going to need all that to keep up.
I'm laughing because people still do that. That's
I know.
It's funny. It's so
high
bad.
reps for cuts.
It's so bad, man. It's so bad.
High reps for cuts. That's so funny, man. All right, let's move on to the listener question of the day. Again, guys, if you have a question you'd like us to answer, you could submit it on our website, newyorkmuscleradio.com/listener question. Or you can call your question in at 508-687-2534. All right, so today's question is from Michael Weberberger. He says, hey, guys, greetings from good old Arnold country, Austria, and thanks for your episode on body types. There's always new stuff to take away from your show. You covered some hybrids in terms of nutrition and training, but not the ecto/endo. I'm definitely a hard gainer, ecto, but have never been lean. Even as a high school kid weighing 125 pounds at 6 feet tall, you could never see my abs. Now, sitting at 173 pounds, it's hard to put on muscle when I bulk and impossible, even with calories as low as 1,600, to lose body fat when I cut. I would really appreciate your take on nutrition and training for the ecto/endo type. All the best, Michael. a good question,
Yeah.
and that's a tough problem. We didn't cover skinny fat.
I think we did, but maybe we didn't go too in depth with it. And, to give him the short answer, that's definitely a problem with that body type. And the reason is because muscle is going to help you get leaner. So if you have trouble putting it on, no matter how much you diet, even if you have a fast metabolism, let's say, if you don't have a lot of muscle, it's going to be very hard for you to get lean, because the more muscle you have on your frame, the more it's going to be working in your favor, even when you're not working out, when you're not dieting, to burn fat and to get you lean. Myself and Anthony, we're not huge guys, but we have significant amount of muscle on our frame for our frames. So we always have an advantage.
That's the other thing I want to add in there.
Yeah. So, we always have the added advantage of
Real natties.
of it not being easy for us to get fat. But it wasn't always like this. When I first started training, I didn't have muscle on my frame. I had like an average amount of muscle, and I put on fat easily. Now that I have put on much more muscle than when I first started, I was like 130 pounds when I first started, I could gain fat much easier then because there wasn't as much muscle on my frame. So the goal is with somebody like that, and we have to do this, and a lot of people don't like this, even if it takes you, because you do put on a little bit of body fat, even if it takes you some body fat to gain that muscle, I rather bulk you up, put some fat on you, but also put muscle on you. Then we could diet you down. Once we strip that fat off, you're not going to have a hard time keeping it off, because now you're leaner and you have muscle. So I think the beginning phases for somebody with that body type, and I did this myself, is you got to bulk up. You got to put a little bit of fat on. And I think Anthony did this similarly too when he first started training. He bulked up pretty excessively. He never got fat, but he added body fat to his frame. And I think that that's a step that most people, beginners in general, should probably take, especially if they don't naturally put muscle on and if they don't naturally sit very lean. Take some of the fat gain with it so you bulk up, so you do put that muscle on. Once that muscle is on your frame, then we could kind of refine it. We could diet you down, and we could keep you lean then.
The other thing that I would recommend to you too, and not repeating what he said, but the other thing that I would recommend doing, since you're an ectomorph, which basically means you need a lot of calories to sustain weight, but you're an endomorph at the same time, where it's you put on fat rather easily. What I would recommend to you is keeping some cardio in there as far as training goes throughout the course of the year, just to keep that metabolic pathway open, just to keep that ability for your body to burn fat open. You don't want that to be closed. So, like I said, it doesn't have to be an excessive, maybe high intensity cardio 2 or 3 times a week is pretty much all you would need, just to kind of keep the fat gains at bay.
Yeah. Yeah, you don't want to purposely put on fat, but there's some people, depending on their body types, where you can't have them really gain much muscle without getting some fat on, at least in the initial stages when they're still a little bit lighter. They don't have a lot of muscle on their frame.
Yeah, like I said, it'll just offset some of those extra calories you have to take in to put.
Right.
So in other words, yeah, you're eating 4,000 calories to try to put weight on. So instead of having all those 4,000 calories to put weight on, at least if you burn some of them doing some cardio, you'll be able to kind of offset that. That's what I think would work best, honestly.
Yeah, some people just need to go through that initial bulk where they do put on weight. I don't recommend it if you don't have to, but some people do.
Did you ever go through that? Since you're talking a lot today again, do you put on, like, do you ever go through a big bulk like that? And what was it from when to when?
Not really, but like I said, when I first started wanting to get muscular, because when I first originally started, if anybody knows my story, when I first started working out, my goal was just to burn fat. So after I got through that fat loss phase, I was 130 pounds. Then I wanted to put muscle on, and I would say my bulk lasted initially from 130 to about 160. That was like my initial bulk, where I put muscle on, but I also put a little bit of fat on. So I probably got up to 160. I'd say my body fat was probably like 13%. Maybe 14. Like, it was a little bit sloppier than I sit right now, but now that I have more muscle on me, like I said, it's not easy for me to get sloppy. So I think you have to go through that phase where you're going to get a little bit sloppy. That was a 30-pound gain. Obviously, I didn't just gain 30 pounds of pure muscle. Over the years, I definitely did, but that was probably in a time frame of like a year and a half or so. So, you're going to take a little fat gain in the beginning. It wasn't excessive for me. 160 pounds is still not heavy by any means. But coming from 130 to 160, I had to throw a little bit of fat on my frame to get that muscle on too.
Yeah. No, that was a good question, Mike. So thank you for that question. All right, man. Let me finish my food here. Let's take a short commercial break, and then we'll be right back with today's topic: restricting carbs to gain muscle.
Do you want to get the results you've always dreamed of? Do you want coaches that genuinely care, are professional, and get back to you in a timely manner? Do you want to be stronger, healthier, and look better naked? Then let me tell you, New York Muscle Radio is definitely your answer. Since working with them, I can hardly believe the results.
They coached me through a post-contest reverse diet and all the way through to an off-season strength program.
These two fitness geniuses have pushed me outside of my comfort zone, and in the process, I have been able to make big jumps on all of my major lifts.
In 14 weeks, I added 100 pounds to my powerlifting total and smashed my first meet.
Since working with them, I've added 55 pounds to my squat, 50 pounds to my deadlift, and 20 pounds to my bench press.
And in 12 weeks, I dropped over 10 pounds of body fat and added over 20 pounds to all my lifts.
I have never had as amazing of glutes as I have training with them. So I can say, no matter what your goals are, you're guaranteed to be stronger, healthier, and let's face it, better looking if Pete and Anthony are your coaches.
So if you are tuning in to listen and learn from the huge array of knowledge these two have, or if you want to hire them as your coaches, you will not be disappointed.
New York Muscle Radio is the best in the business.
You heard it from our New York Muscle Radio clients. Do you want to join our team and reach your fitness goals? Visit NewYorkMuscleRadio.com for all our coaching programs.
But I'll tell you what, when I'm done, my biceps are humongous. Humongous. Like that bang.
My name is Anthony Bevilacqua, and I'm the host of New York Muscle Radio podcast. My arms have been a weak point for years. When I started training, my arms measured 11 inches. Even after many years of hardcore training, nothing would get them to grow. With the help of my co-host, Big Pete, we set out on a mission to gain 1 solid inch to my arms in 12 weeks.
In the greatest experiment of all.
12 weeks later, this program finally helped me get 18-inch arms. The 12-week arm experiment, the ultimate arm growth program, ebook, the audiobook, and the workout video. Pick up your copy now on NewYorkMuscleRadio.com.
Damn.
Nice, Pete.
What?
I saw you checking out that girl's butt.
What? I was just checking out her yoga pants.
Pete.
I was thinking you'd look really good in yoga pants.
Uh-huh.
I was like trying to check out what brand it was. Like I was looking at her form on deadlifts. They were all messed up.
Do you think she has a nicer butt than me?
Well, it definitely doesn't look like a pancake.
Did you just call my butt a pancake?
Well, I mean...
What can I do?
You gotta try New York Muscle Radio's Glutealicious program.
Glutealicious?
Yeah, you'll finally get a celebrity booty, like all the other girls following the program.
Fine, I'll do it. But don't get jealous when other guys check out my glutealicious ass.
Glutealicious, your guide to getting a celebrity booty in 12 weeks. Now available exclusively at NewYorkMuscleRadio.com.
Hey, great coffee.
Doesn't it taste good as fresh perk?
Better.
Better than those girls make at the office?
Honey, their coffee can't hold a candle to yours.
Caffeine, the world's only instant coffee that's fortified with muscle-building protein. Visit buyproteincoffee.com now.
What's up, New York Muscle Radio listeners? It's your co-host, Big Pete Kacharian, and I'm glad you're all listening. Put down the tilapia and asparagus. Learn how to get bigger, stronger, and leaner eating what you want. Pick up a copy of Cracking the Flexible Dieting Code exclusively at NewYorkMuscleRadio.com. But for now, let's get to the show.
All right, guys, we're back. New York Muscle Radio, episode number 149, Restricting Carbs to Gain Muscle. Yes, so again, this is going to be a really, really cool. This is outside of the box thinking from your two muscle building coaches here. And again, we tell you guys what works because we have literally tried everything. Again, I've bulked myself up to 218 pounds naturally on 5,500 calories a day. It was horrible. But again, one of the things is we've both realized that we've went through off seasons, and you get to kind of a point where you have diminishing returns, especially when it comes to carbohydrates. So we believe we had figured out the ceiling for naturals as far as where their carb intake should be for male and female in the off season or in your time when you're really trying to put on muscle. We shouldn't really call it off season. I guess when you're in a muscle building.
Yeah, when you're not in a dieting phase. And, nobody talks about this. I've yet to hear one person ever talk about this before. And the common trend is when you're in a gaining phase, you just keep increasing calories. Keep increasing them. Oh, you're not gaining weight? Keep increasing them. I am 100% against that when you hit a certain limit of carbohydrates. Absolutely. There's going to be a point of diminishing returns where now you're not only going to just start putting on body fat, but you're actually going to prevent muscle gain. And that sounds like a pretty bold statement to make, but 100%, if you get to a certain point in carbs, depending on your body type, your weight, how many carbs you're eating, where that extra carbs is actually going to prevent muscle gain. And we're going to get into it. I don't want to really give that away, but I kind of want to just give that as
pipe
a
down,
primer.
man. Today, all you're doing is talking today.
Well, I don't have a
bowl
of food in my mouth right now.
The last two podcasts, man. The last one I'll give you because you're cerebral and that whole episode was yours. But again, this one, you're excited today.
I'm it's because I'm motivated today.
Motivation is garbage, man.
Yeah.
Did you listen earlier? All right, so let's start this off. So what does I guess let's start by defining what a typical off-season diet looks like. So what is a typical off-season diet, by everyone else's standards? What does that actually look like?
By everyone else's standards?
Yeah. Let's go by what the fitness norm should be if you're trying to put on muscle.
So, you definitely, the fitness norm would be make sure you have your protein requirements met. The fitness norm is probably somewhere between 1 and 1.5 grams of protein per pound of body weight. Make sure you have your fat requirements met. The fitness norm is pretty divided on that. There's people that say, you need at least 30% fat. You need half your body weight in fat. Or you should go super high fat, keep carbs low. So the norm is there's a little bit of a difference with that. But I would say
this depends on your belief as far as that goes.
That's what I'm saying. It depends who you ask about fat. Protein is everyone pretty much agrees on that range. Fat is probably somewhere at least I'd say 25, 30% fat. Some people like to go a lot higher. And then carbs, basically, that's pretty much the most. That one you'll manipulate the most as far as weight gain. So the fitness trend would be if you're not gaining, increase your carbs. Keep increasing them till you start gaining weight. Then you have the right amount. If you're not gaining weight, keep increasing them more and more and more. That's the traditional trend I'd say most people follow.
Yeah, then you have the people that just kind of say, okay, eat whatever you want. You want to gain muscle, just keep track of your calories and protein and just let everything else fall where they may. That's another camp. And then the other third camp is one of those stupid calculators, those diet calculators that do that you pay a monthly subscription for that that just, it's a computer program. It's whatever. It tells you what to eat. And those things are completely ridiculous. But those things just literally just plug in. So you plug your weight in every week, and it just says, okay, increase carbs, increase carbs. It's just, it's some algorithm that just does, whatever it wants to do.
There's a major problem with that, and that's because it only takes into account your weight. And your weight doesn't always mean anything, because what we're going to talk about here is the reason why carb restriction actually is good at certain points is because there's going to be a lot of other things going on with your body. Once you reach a certain body fat percentage, once your carbs go over a certain amount, your body's not going to tolerate those carbs the same exact way. So weight might be a good factor in the beginning stages, especially if you're coming off of a diet. You can see what your weight is doing. If somebody's still lower in carbs, lower in body fat, the weight's going to pretty much tell everything. Once you hit pretty much your body fat set point or you go above it, now your weight is not going to tell you everything.
So go back and define that for people, Pete. You like saying big words to sound smart, but let's let our listeners who aren't sure what you're talking about speak English.
So if you're coming off of a dieting phase, you're going to be sitting at a body fat percentage, which is probably lower than what your body naturally wants to sit at. You had to force yourself to get into contest shape. You had to force yourself to get in shape for the beach, the summer, whatever it is. Your body doesn't want to sit like that. So if you just started eating whatever you want, you're naturally going to gain weight. There's going to be a point where it starts to level off, however, and that's where your body fat set point is, where now your body's more comfortable. It's not going to say, oh, let's store fat. Like, let's just sit here. So that's pretty much the body fat where most people, if they ate the average diet that was comfortable for them, that their body weight would kind of stick around.
Yeah. All right, so then let's just roll right into this now. So again, now what happens after you so you finish a diet? We always recommend maximizing your metabolism. So basically what that means is slowly adding in calories back into the diet until you bring your body fat, your kind of your weight back up, and you're at a normal calorie level. So let's just say, give you easy examples. Before you dieted, you were at 3,000 calories. When you were dieting, you got down to 2,000. So at the end of the diet, you were having 2,000. So you want to maximize your metabolism. I'm sorry, my dogs are making a lot of noise right now.
Their metabolism right now.
They're hitting their bowls, actually. You hear that banging is hitting their bowls. So anyway, all right. So now, whatever, you finish the diet at 2,000 calories. Now you have to slowly add back the calories until you're semi-close to that 3,000 calorie mark again. Because that's that mark where your body was comfortable. During that phase, you should manage, if you do it correctly and slowly enough, you should manage to maintain that new lean body fat that you're at while getting your metabolism back to where it was. Because when you diet down, your metabolism actually slows down. So you want to kind of bring everything back slowly. And obviously you can't maintain that 2,000. Let's just say, so you went from 3,000 to 2,000. It'd be very hard to maintain 2,000 calories for the rest of your life. So you have to be able to build up that metabolism. So now, what happens when you reach that calorie level again? So what happens after you maximize your metabolism? So now you're back at 3,000 calories.
Yeah, so this is where a lot of people, I think, mess it up, because what you just explained is not too hard to mess up. As if you follow that process.
It is, man. A lot of people mess it up.
They do because they go too fast. They binge, which will
go out to eat.
That'll ruin it, guys. That's the worst thing you could do.
Oh, forget it, man.
You're worse off doing that than just.
You remember how many times we said that to each other? We were maximizing our metabolisms together. And we went out one meal and fuck, that's like 4 weeks right there wasted.
It's true. In that state, when you're still rebuilding your metabolism, you can do that. It won't happen right now. If me and Anthony go out and binge and we eat 10,000 calories. It's not going to destroy us for a month. But
speaking of 10,000 calories, man, I really want to do that 10,000 calorie challenge on YouTube. I really want to do it with you, man. I know you have no desire to do it.
I really don't.
Because you're a big P, but
yeah, I really
don't know, man. I want to do it. I want to do it so bad. I can't do it by myself. That's gay.
If enough people request it, then we'll do it. But I'm not gonna do it to have 5 people watch it and give me a thumbs up. If there's a real desire from the people to see us do it,
I just want to see if I could do 10,000 calories. I think I can throughout the whole day. I think I can.
Yeah, I mean, it'll be work. It would be fun, but I'm not gonna do it unless there's a real reason to do it.
That whole day would be a tax write-off, man.
Yeah, I don't even care though. But back to what I was saying. Yeah, if we do that right now, because our metabolism pretty much maxed out, we're eating enough calories where our metabolism doesn't need to get any faster. It's not going to destroy us. We're not going to lay down body fat. We're not going to not be able to recover for a month. Now, when you're building up somebody's metabolism from a dieting phase, if they do something crazy like that, their metabolic rate is not even used to eating, let's say, 3,000 calories, and they go binge eat 4, 5, 6. They're just going to store body fat because their metabolism's not fast enough. And then when they put more fat on, now they have more fat on a frame that still has a slow metabolism. It's not going to help the process. So the goal with the reverse diet is to keep the person lean while increasing those calories so that when they do eat more calories, they don't store them as fat. So you want to make sure during this process, you don't put fat on while you're bringing those calories back up.
Yeah. So again, then what's going to happen? What happens after then? So you basically, you're at a state right now where your metabolism is back to where it was. And now this is kind of the point where you're like, okay, so now I'm back to where I was. I want to slowly I want to put on more muscle. I want to build up my body a little bit more. I want to get past where I was. And this even includes for women too. It's important for women to go through that and actually say, okay, I need to gain some muscle now because I have to speed up my metabolism. I have to, and this is the only way you're going to look better when you diet down again, by having more muscle. Because again, more muscle equals more tone, more definition. So you have to build up a little bit of muscle. So now you maximize your metabolism. You're back to where you were. Now you have to rebuild your body. So what happens, most people, they just keep kind of quote unquote maximizing their metabolism and keep adding back in calories. Okay, so I'm at the point of 3,000. I just have to keep bringing that number up. So now I go from 3,000 to 3,100 to 3,200 to 3,300 to 3,500. The problem is when you do that, most people make all those calories come from carbs most of the time.
The calculator will probably tell you to do that too.
Oh, that calculator will have you at 9,000 grams of carbs a day. But and then tell you you're doing a great job. Add another 1,000. So when you get to that point of 3,500 calories, you reach the point just with your carb intake of the point of no return, I like to call it, where there's no more bang for your buck in having that. When you reach a certain level of carbohydrates in your body, again, this number is going to be different and individual for every different person, so it's kind of hard to give an exact number, but you reach a point where your glycogen stores or your carbohydrates get stored in your muscles as glycogen. So you reach a point where your glycogen stores are completely full, and anything else you add on top of that is just overfilling the tank. So it'd be like sticking, filling up your car with gas, and once you fill up your car with gas and the thing goes tuk because it stops. You know, it makes the noise, poof, it stops. And let's go. That'd be like you keep trying to hold on the thing and keep adding more and more gas in. Eventually, the gas is going to come pouring out the side. You're going to have gasoline all over the place. That's kind of what happens to your carb intake. So we want to. There's a couple of reasons why we recommend restricting carbs in the off season, and it's for that reason only. You want to keep that kind of tank full, but you don't want it to be overflowing. So we'll go into this a little more in depth now. So the number one reason is the importance of staying lean in the off season.
Right. Yeah. See, that's the biggest thing. So what happens is the biggest thing with reverse dieting and then maximize that metabolism is, like you said, you want to fill out your glycogen stores. You want to get as much glycogen into the muscle as possible so that now you're able to build muscle. So what we really need to focus on here are two things: your body fat and then your insulin sensitivity. We're going to get into insulin sensitivity, but body fat, what generally happens is you start storing body fat when those glycogen stores are tapped out. Now you're consuming excess calories that maybe they're higher than the amount you need to build muscle. They're higher than the amount you need to get to maintain your weight. What happens is those calories have to go somewhere, especially if it's in an excess of carbs too. Now there's no more room in the muscle for them to go. What happens? They get laid down into fat stores. What happens now is, now that you're laying down fat, which is not necessarily always a bad thing, but when you do it excessively now because you're consuming so many calories that are not going to use, you're going to lay it down as fat. And now when you have a body fat that's higher than your ideal body fat, your body handles insulin much differently. I always say it, a fat person eating carbs or a person with a higher body fat is going to take those carbs and put them into the fat cells. They're not going to go into the muscle cells. You take a lean person with a lot of muscle, they eat carbs. Those carbs go into the muscle. Those carbs go to building muscle. So if you start eating so much that you start gaining body fat, what happens now is all the food you're eating is actually not going towards building muscle anymore. It's going to store more body fat. So in the off season, you want to keep yourself lean. You don't have to keep yourself contest lean because that's not ideal, but you don't want to get over a certain body fat percentage, and that certain body fat percentage is going to be different for everybody. But wherever your body fat set point is, you really don't want to go too much higher, because now what you're doing is you're telling all those foods that you eat not to go into the muscle cells, but to go into the fat cells. So if you overeat too much, especially people go crazy with the carbs, now they're putting on body fat. It doesn't matter how many calories you eat. Even if you eat less calories, more calories, those carbs are not going to be handled the same way as if you were lean and then you ate those carbs.
I wasn't really listening to you because you just been talking, so I stopped listening to you. But did you talk about insulin sensitivity?
I touched on it, but I didn't want to talk too much about it yet because we're going to go into that next.
All right. So, good. So do you want to just continue rolling and talking since this is becoming the Pete's podcast?
No, go ahead. I'll let you talk insulin sensitivity.
Thanks so much, man. All right. So again, the importance of insulin sensitivity. So again, Pete mentioned this before, but insulin sensitivity is basically your body's ability to handle carbohydrates. And the higher insulin sensitivity is, the better your body's going to be able to pulling those carbs into the muscle. So think of it like a locking key. So let's just say the keys are running down your bloodstream, and the locks where the key goes is good insulin sensitivity. When you have good insulin sensitivity, every time the key comes down, it goes into lock. Now, when you get to the point of insulin sensitivity being horrible, or when you get too fat, not staying lean in the off season, when you get too fat and when you get to the point of no return with carbohydrates, it's almost like something covers those keyholes. So now the key can't get in the keyhole. So now the key has to keep going, and it doesn't find another key opening. So that's kind of what happens with insulin sensitivity. You want to keep those insulin receptors open to be able to pull the glycogen and the carbohydrates into the muscle. So this is why it's so important to have good insulin sensitivity. And this is why also in the off season, I recommend keeping a little bit of cardio in there too, because that's going to help keep that insulin sensitivity up. And using something like apple cider vinegar also will help improve that insulin sensitivity. But another way you can do this is by keeping carbs at that perfect limit. So again, like I said, using the gas analogy, you have the gas thing in the tank, and it hits that number. Doof, it stops pumping. That's the kind of the number of the carbohydrate that you want to know for you in order not to spill over. You don't want that spillover. You want to keep the insulin right there. You want to keep the carbohydrate level at that intake.
Yeah, and a really good example, and some people could probably relate to this, but it's kind of it's a trend that goes around and people don't understand it. They always assume after a high carb meal, oh, you're probably going to look huge tomorrow. You're going to fill out. You're going to look really big. That only happens if you're insulin sensitive. Now, when you're resistant to insulin, let's say your body fat is up, like a fatter person, a person with a higher body fat percentage, if they have a high carb meal and they work out, they're not going to fill out and look bigger. They're actually going to look a little flatter. You know why? Because those carbs didn't go to the muscle cells. They went to the fat cells. Now, somebody who's contest lean, if they're contest prepping and they carb up, they're very insulin sensitive because they're depleted of carbs. Now, what happens when they have all those carbs? They go right into the muscles. So myself and a lot of people I know, in the quote-unquote off-season, when their body fat gets a little higher, their insulin sensitivity tends to go down. What happens is if they go out and they have a huge carb meal or they overeat or something like that, the next day, and this happens to me all the time, I don't wake up looking bigger and fuller. I actually look a little bit fatter because my fat cells are holding those carbs. They're holding water around my midsection, and they couldn't go into the muscle cells, so they didn't get bigger because they're going into the fat cells because I have a higher body fat percentage. Now, that also plays a role in the off-season. I naturally actually look a little bit smaller in the off-season because my muscle cells are not getting fed all these carbs constantly. When I start to diet down, my insulin sensitivity increases dramatically. So every time I eat a carb, my muscles fill out from that. It doesn't go into the fat cells. So a lot of times when people get above a certain body fat percentage, myself included, I'll actually look a little bit smaller because my muscles are not constantly uptaking carbs. So that's why you do want to stay lean. That's why you do want to keep your insulin sensitivity up. Once you get to that point where you reach that certain body fat percentage and a certain amount of carbohydrates, it could be one or the other or both. It's generally both, though. You're going to have a point of diminishing returns. Now, those carbs are not going to do what you want them to do to build muscle.
Exactly. So this is kind of why, and you can see this more prevalent in Pete, because Pete actually looks a little bit bigger when he diets down, only because his body, he's really insulin sensitive. He has insulin insensitive. In the off-season.
Well, I can definitely get a bit resistant to insulin once my body fat goes above a certain point. It's actually, for me, it's not so much the amount I consume. I have to keep myself a bit leaner. And I've actually been doing an experiment the last 5 days with this, and it just proves my point again.
It goes.
No, I have. I'll show you some photos if you don't believe me. But you know, and you said this to me so many times too. The second I start dieting, I look bigger. You know, it happens every single time because I start to restrict my carbs. Maybe a week of me restricting my carbs, all of a sudden my insulin sensitivity just shoots up. Now all those carbs are going into the muscles. It looks like I have a constant pump on. A lot of times when I start dieting, people say, "Oh, you look bigger." Yeah, I look bigger because my muscles are fuller. So I've been experimenting again it's been 5 days now just to see what would happen. I wanted to just make sure that what I'm talking about again is true, and it happens every single time. So I started cycling my carbs a little bit, not my calories. I'm not trying to lose weight, but I said, let me just supply my body with a little bit less insulin consistently because I'm constantly pounding calories because I'm just maintaining my weight. Let me restrict carbs a little bit. And I've been taking before and after pictures morning and night. And it's so funny because, 3 or 4 days in, you can see my muscles getting a little fuller. And my midsection is holding less water because those carbs are not going into fat cells. They're going into muscles. Did I gain muscle and lose fat? No. But my nutrient partitioning actually increased dramatically. And that's because my body's a little more sensitive to the insulin.
So I hate when you explain things because you explain them just terribly. So what did you do to explain this experiment? Because now everyone's going to want to know. Yeah. So what did you do?
So my goal is, and I'm not trying to cut down. I don't want to. There's no reason for me to try to lose weight. There's no reason for me to try to get leaner. I want to keep.
You can't go from 150 to 140.
Yeah. That wouldn't be cool. I can't look too small. So, I really have no desire to lose weight, but my goal was, and I've been noticing lately, especially because now I'm about a year since the last time I dieted down. So it's pretty much a year off season, which is an ideal off season for most people. I'm at the point now where my body fat's where it wants to be. I'm not going to gain really too much body fat. Even if I go off my diet, I'm pretty loose with tracking, but I have an idea of where my carbs are and my calories are on a certain basis, a certain day. But what happens now is I can't increase them anymore because my body fat's where it wants to be. If I increase my carbs more, I'm going to just increase my body fat. My insulin sensitivity is going to go down more. I'm also pretty much maxed out in carbs. So what I said I want to do is I want to increase my insulin sensitivity so that I walk around with the carbs more in my muscle cells rather than my fat cells when I eat them. So what I did was I said I'm going to keep calories pretty much the same. I'm eating about 33 to 3,500 calories a day. My carb intake is not crazy high, but it's where I would max it out for myself, which is about 400 to 450 a day. That's really where I would max it out in terms of making sure my insulin sensitivity is still okay, but it's pushing the high point. So how do I improve that without necessarily wanting to lose weight or burn body fat? I'm going to keep my calories high. I have to eat a little bit more fat, a little bit more protein, but I'll have a couple of days where I start to taper the carbs down progressively so that I get into a point where I'm a little bit carb depleted slightly, so that when I do go back to eating carbs, now what happens is, so for me, if I'm eating 4 to 450, I'll have a couple of days where I do like 300, 350, then maybe a day or so, which is a low day for me, about 200, 250, more like 250. That's pretty low for me. So now what happens is I slowly depleted myself a little bit of insulin. My calories are still high, so I'm not really losing weight. So I'm not really burning fat now, but my body's not uptaking all this insulin, all this glucose that it's been. So now the insulin sensitivity is going to go up a little bit because I'm not as resistant because I don't have so much of it coming in. Then
so where will you put the calories? So if you're going from, you said 350? Carb intake, 350?
So I initially was like at 450. That would be normal for me.
So then you dropped it to what?
So I would drop it to a lower amount, something like 350, but then I would give myself a day where I go pretty low, especially like if it's an off day.
So what do you increase to offset that if you want to?
So I would bring the fats. Mostly it would be fats, a little bit of protein, but more so with fats because my fats I never go too high.
So what does your fat go from
so
what to
my
what?
fat's usually around 75 or 80. So I'll boost it up to 90, 100 just to compensate for the calories I cut in carbs because again I don't want to lose weight. I have no desire to get leaner. I just want to increase my insulin sensitivity, which it's funny because in turn will actually improve my overall appearance without even burning fat. So I compensate the calories by going up with the fat. The lower the carbs, the higher the fat goes. Same with protein, but not as much. There's no need for me to really bring my protein up much higher. I take in about 250 a day. So what happens is I just basically deplete glycogen slightly to the point where my body will handle it better. Then I reintroduce it. I give myself a high carb day. The next high carb day now is more of a baseline carb day. So naturally you would think I just go back to looking the way I looked. But no, I depleted the carbs. So now those carbs are out of the fat cells. They weren't really oversaturated in the muscle cells, so they're lower, but they're not depleted yet. Now all the carbs that are going to go in, if I do this correctly, will go into the muscle cells. So I'll be a little bit less watery, but fuller in the muscles. And like I said, I've been doing this for 5 days. I went through one high carb day so far. And overall, every single day that I'm doing this, I get a little bit, when I say leaner, it's not actually body fat. It's less water around the midsection especially. A little bit less watery and a little bit fuller because my body's handling those carbs better. And I'm only doing this as an experiment. There's no real net gain to get from this, but it just shows, it's showing me on myself, it's more of an experiment that what I'm talking about here is really true.
Yeah. One of the things also we forgot to mention too is muscle grows the best in a leaner individual. So again, if everyone's goal should be to gain muscle. Women, men, doesn't matter what age, old, young. You want to be, the goal is always to gain muscle. So muscle is going to grow in a leaner state better. You know, if you're over a certain body fat percentage, your body is not going to really put muscle on as easy. It's going to be more geared toward adding more fat with more calories in. So again, this is why it's important to stay lean and to keep those insulin sensitivity up because you're going to be able to gain more muscle that way. So another way you could do this too, and this is kind of like what I've been doing, which is different from what Pete's doing. So Pete basically talked about and covered point number 4, and I'm going to cover point number 3. So point number 4 is basically carb cycling, which is basically exactly what he said he's doing, his little experiment. That's a good way to keep insulin sensitivity up. And when you reach that point of no return with your gas tank, using my analogy again, you'd cut it back, cut the carbs. You know, so in other words, then if that's the case, using my car analogy again, don't go back to the gas station when the gas tank is already full. Kind of let it empty out and then refill it again. That's kind of Pete's approach. My approach, though, is a little different. And also only because my situation is a lot different. So for me, I compete in powerlifting. I compete in the 205-pound class. Now, my body, I like to sit, I feel good at around 195. That's usually like a good weight for me. But if I sit that low in my weight class, it's like a disadvantage because I could be a little stronger the heavier I get. So for me, what I do is I do mini cuts. So I'll bulk, I'll put on a lot of calories, I'll just increase my calories, whatever, until I get to the top point of my class. So like 205, 206, even up to 208. Depends. We'll see how heavy I can get. Because again, it takes a lot for me to move the bar that high. So I'll push for me, I'll get my calories up. I'll get my weight up to that point. Once I hit that point, because I know that I'm at the top of my weight class, I'll do a mini cut again, and I'll try to diet back down to like 195. So I do kind of like a 10-pound swing in weight because that's just where I want to be. And ideally, every time I do that, I get a little bit leaner with a little bit more muscle. So that just works for me because for me, again, like I said, I'm in the 205 weight class, so it's hard for me to get out of that weight class completely. So it would be no point for me to diet down to single-digit body fat to have to go back up again. That would be stupid. So every time I do that, I get leaner and maintain more muscle. But again, when I do this, doing those mini cuts, I'm also having those swings where I'm getting my carbs up and I'm dropping my carbs down. For me, I like to keep it a little more consistent. I don't have the patience to carb cycle. Plus, I don't want to have a low day. I could probably do that, what Pete's doing, and then just kind of balance it all out at the end of the week. But for me, I think I handle carbs better than Pete does. And I don't think I have the same issue with holding water that he does. Plus, his goal is a little different, is obviously different from mine. So for me, and what I recommend for most people is using a weight. Pick a weight that you feel comfortable at, push yourself above that weight, and then swing yourself back down.
Yeah, I don't recommend doing a carb cycling approach for somebody like you. And most competitors, even if it's powerlifting or if it's for physique competitions, to actually do the carb cycling, there's definitely a different time and place to do carb cycling as opposed to bulking and cutting cycles. The carb cycling, we could get into it after this, where and when you should use it. But just to give you the short answer, I would do that for somebody who's not going to compete anytime soon, who's just kind of wants to sit around the same weight but slowly add muscle. That's a better approach. If you're taking somebody who's a competitive bodybuilder in the off season and they just finished a dieting phase, your goal is, if they're going to compete again in the next year or two, you want to add as much muscle to their frame as possible, get their weight up as high as possible while still keeping them lean. So bulking and cutting cycles definitely work better for that because you're going to have them in a period of time where you're overfeeding them, where you're building muscle. And then you kind of hit the point where, okay, you know what, your body fat's getting a little high, your insulin sensitivity is going down. We'll cut you up a little bit. We'll get your insulin sensitivity up. We'll drop a little bit of body fat. We'll hold on to the muscle. Then we'll keep repeating the process. So it's kind of like taking 2 or 3 steps forward, taking 1 step back so that you can take 2 or 3 steps forward again. That's definitely more beneficial, especially for somebody like you. Yeah, I wouldn't recommend doing the carb cycling because it's not really going to get you anywhere in a fast period of time. It's going to be like a more long-term approach. So for somebody like you, you want to keep getting stronger, but you want to keep your weight down. You want to keep your insulin sensitivity up. You want to go through little phases where you're kind of swinging forward, then taking a step back, then going forward again. That's definitely going to be more beneficial. So for competitors and physique athletes, bulking definitely needs to have some type of carb-restricted period. So whether you're cycling carbs or you're going on an all-out surplus where your carbs are high, you should take that period, whether it's a mini cut or a regular diet for a longer period of time where you do diet down. It's going to help you build more muscle. Even if you say, I want to just bulk up for the next 3 years, having dieting phases in there is going to actually help you build more muscle.
Yeah. The other thing, too, that we didn't even talk about, but I think is also good to help improve insulin sensitivity also, is intermittent fasting. I like intermittent fasting. I've been doing it not just for ease, because it's easier for me to, I have clients in the morning and just my morning schedule is a lot more rougher than the rest of the day. So for me, I just literally skip breakfast and my first meal is pre-workout. So that's usually what I eat. For me, doing that, I'm confining my food to a certain amount of hours. You have the same amount of insulin. It's hard to explain though. Like you give yourself a lot of time away from food, if that sense. So if my last meal, I finish at 9 o'clock and I won't eat again until the next day till 12. I have that huge window where my body's looking for food. So it's going to bring my insulin sensitivity up.
Yeah. And what happens generally too is, and this happens indirectly, a lot of people don't even realize, is if you're confining the amount of time you have in a day to eating, you generally eat those carbs and those calories more spaced around your workout, where in turn that's going to actually increase the use of those carbs and calories to go into the muscle cells. So, if you're sitting around, it's 5 p.m., you didn't work out today, and you just feel like smashing 500 grams of carbs, you're not really telling your body to put that in the muscle cells. Now, if you didn't eat any carbs all day, you have 100 grams of carbs, you go work out, your body's going to tell those carbs to go into the muscle cells. Then you have another 100 afterwards. You ate 200 grams of carbs, space around your workout. Your body knows where to put those. So it is also about timing. But when you have too much insulin floating around in your body throughout a 24-hour period, then that matters much less.
All right. So now I know everyone's thinking this question, so we're going to answer it. So what do we recommend as a max intake for carbohydrates for males and for females? Again, this is the absolute max that we are at. This is where like the gas tank is topped off and the gas is just about to spill over the side. And again, of course, there's going to be individual differences to this. So we're not saying this is a one-size-fits-all approach. But the absolute max, when the gas is just like, it's at the top of the rim and it's just about to leak out. It's that moment when you give that last thrust in, Big Pete, and it's just about to come out.
It's called the point of no return.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
For men, we're looking at a 500, and I'm sorry, Mom, if you're listening to this podcast and you just heard that joke that I made. My mom, the other day I called, wait, hold on, time out. The other day I called my mom the other day, right? I hear your voice in the background. I'm like, what the fuck? She's like, I'm listening to the podcast. I'm like, oh, no.
Which one was it?
I don't know. I don't even know. I don't remember. I think one of the newer ones.
Uh-huh.
Oh, but I was like, oh, man, I make too many puns in that joke. My poor mom, she's probably shaking her head every time she hears it.
She's
all right, so anyways,
he's such a nice young man.
Yeah. Here I am talking about the last thrust in.
Yeah, the final thrust.
Yeah. All right. So the absolute max for men is the point of no return for men. Again, it's going to be very individual, but the point of no return is 500 grams. That is the point of no return for guys. Again, it's always individual difference, but from me, especially from experience, anything over 500 is a complete waste. Complete waste. It's just going to go to poo-poo. So it's complete waste. And for females, we didn't forget about our ladies here, the absolute max point of no return, that last thrust in, 300 grams.
Yeah, and this is we're kind of talking about more of like an anomaly here. Most males and females are not going to reach that number because for them, it's probably going to be maybe 100 grams of carbs less. For a lot of guys, and me included, I'm a perfect example. You can keep me contest shredded all the way up to 400 grams of carbs. I don't store any of it in my fat cells. It goes right to my muscle. When I start tipping over 400 consistently, because it's also about the how many days in a row you do this, how long it is. Once you get them kind of maxed out, if you do 1 day high carb and you start doing carb cycling, you'll handle those carbs better. But if you start setting the carbs, let's say for me, if I'm at 400 and I'm still lean, my last reverse diet, I went all the way up to 400, stayed shredded, didn't gain any body fat. Once I start tipping over 400, 450, I'll start gaining a little weight. Like if I keep it in there consistently, I'll start to see a downward trend. My insulin sensitivity is starting to go down. I'm starting to raise in body fat. And then it's just kind of like a snowball effect from there. So for me, it's honestly between 400, 450 max. I've had mine at 500 before, and all that happens is I just keep getting more watery, and I'm not getting any bigger, and I actually look worse. So for women, if 3 might be an anomaly, 2 might be a little bit less. 2 might be more ideal, 250. But everybody's going to be a little different. You have to base it on how you look and if you're gaining weight or not. But there's always a point of no return, so don't think that that's not true.
Exactly. So again, like I told you, if you're filling up the gas tank and it takes you $30 to fill up your tank, why would you put $35 in? It makes no sense. So I know now everyone's thinking of this question. So, okay, if I'm at the point of no return with my carbohydrates, I feel good at 400 grams a day, Pete. I'm a male. I feel good at 400 grams a day. What do I increase instead? But I still want to gain weight. But again, I want to adhere to what you're saying. I still want to gain weight. I still want to put on muscle. Or if I'm a female listening to this, hey, Pete. Hey, Big Pete. I love when your hair's gelled. But listen, I really have a question. What do I do when my carbs are too high?
Well,
you come over my house and take your pants off. That's what you're supposed to say, man. What the hell's wrong with you? You're off your game.
Your mom is listening to this podcast, man.
It's all right. She closed her ears for that one.
The one thing you have to do is you always want to make sure, and you should do this even before raising your carbs, is you want to make sure your protein is as high as it should be and your fat is as high as it should be. There's a point of diminishing returns between those also, but you're not going to have this effect of insulin resistance by increasing your fats or increasing your protein the way you would increasing your carbs. So you always have protein and fat to increase, but you have to look at how many calories you're already consuming. If you're a guy and you're consuming 5,000 calories like Anthony, the question's not always necessarily eat more. Should I eat more?
That's for sure.
So even if your weight is not going up, you're supplying your body with enough fuel to build muscle if your training is in place, if your recovery is in place, if everything's in place. So you do get to a point with calories where if you're not gaining weight, you don't necessarily want to increase them more. Because when you get to the point where you're maxed out, let's say you gain 5 pounds of muscle in a year, which is good progress if you're not a newbie, if you've been doing this a long time and you're
not a New York Muscle Radio athlete, or coach, or client.
So how much do you think that's going to translate into weight gain each week? You don't need to see the scale going up consistently every single week to gain 5 pounds of pure muscle in a whole year. So if you're maxed out with calories, your weight is pretty high, you think you can't really handle more carbs, I'd recommend honestly keeping your calories where they are if you're eating enough of them. If you still have room to go up in calories and you think your insulin sensitivity is going to be a little more compromised with more carbs, bump up your fats. You could pretty much get your fats pretty high without having any type of issues with storing body fat.
Yeah, I would say the point of return for fat is around 120 grams. Anything more than that's kind of like a waste too.
And I mean, I think most guys could even get benefit not going that high, but that depends on what their carb intake is. So depending where their carbs are, they might get away with less or more. But yeah, you're probably not going to have that issue with fat as much. But yeah, there's a point where I take people's calories up to a certain amount and I say, you know what? Let's just leave them right there. I wouldn't take them any high. There's a point of diminishing returns with calories. Just because you eat more doesn't mean you're going to gain more muscle. And remember, if you're gaining more fat, you're actually putting a hindrance on extra muscle gain. So you want to make sure you pay attention to that too.
Exactly. But to answer my own question here, what should you increase instead? So let's say your calories, you still need to bump it up, still want to gain weight, but still want to hear what we said. I would definitely say increase your fat. Start with that first, and then once you reach the point of no return there, then start hitting up your protein. A lot of people are afraid, and a lot of those calculator things will put your protein, if you weigh 200 pounds, they'll put your protein at like 150.
Yeah.
So you want to make sure that you have your protein up. It's okay to add more protein. So you can go above that 1.25 to 1.5 range if you need to. But again, that's going to be individual for everybody. But all right, guys, that was today's episode. Hopefully you understand why it's important to restrict carbs to gain muscle. If you can relate to this, if you understand what we're talking about, and again, we're trying to think outside the box here at New York Muscle Radio because we're always trying things based on our experience, which is far more than most people can say. So share this episode with someone. Let someone know. Maybe you know someone who's eating too many carbs in the off season. So maybe this is a perfect episode for them. So again, please share this episode as we want to help the New York Muscle Radio Network grow. Go ahead, big guy. It's your turn.
All right, guys. Pete and Anthony with New York Muscle Radio, and we're out.
Enjoyed this episode of New York Muscle Radio? Make sure to hit that subscribe button, leave us a 5-star review, and be sure to follow us on Facebook, New York Muscle Radio.